So, how much history you want to go way back, or
why was it built?
Why? Okay. Well, I can't actually answer why, but you make up your own mind when I finish. So we'll go back to 1842. William Pomeroy Green, a war veteran living in the county of Louth in Ireland, and it was suggested because of his ill health that he should find a warmer climate. So that works on a day like this, but a few days ago it was even, what was he doing coming here? So he chartered a ship called the Sarah, and he took with him his family, which was 6 sons and a daughter, his wife of course, servants, a couple of house cows, gaming horses, and a house packed up in sections. So they set up home, sailed out to Greenthorpe, set up a home in Melbourne, just north of the airport there. They grew a block of land, 100 acres, built the house there. The children, of course, educated in Melbourne. One of those boys, George Henry Green, who was 4 when he arrived in Australia, studied arts, one of the first students, of course, to go through Melbourne University, Melbourne Undergraduate University. So George Green had a great interest in the land, and after his education he purchased land in northern Victoria, southern New South Wales, developed it, sold it. Had a great interest in wheat farming, because in those days wheat was very short in Australia, of course. Wanted to know a little bit more about it. He travelled around the world. He was married in 1860. He sold all his land interests just after that, and travelled around the world, studied wheat farming, and then came back to this area in 1876, and he purchased 33,000 acres, which goes to our west 14 k's, to the north about 14 kilometres, to the south about 6, and about 6 to 8. This gives you a rough idea what 33,000 acres looked like. He paid 6p an acre for it at the time, which then 6p an acre, which in those days was enormous money, and of course there was even articles written how much he overpaid for it. So he came here, built the first homestead. Now the first homestead was a double red brick building, corrugated iron roof, single story, which took up its eastern wing, the front door area, dining room. In those days the kitchen stood separate from the main homestead, of course, because they burned down a lot. So built the first homestead in 1880, and then commenced what we refer to as share farming. George Green was the founder of share farming in Australia, whereby he granted the land, the seed and the fertiliser to the farmer, and the farmer supplied all the labour that was required to produce a crop off that, and at the end of the season they split it 50-50. And if you went out share farming today, the agreement that you would use is the one that was drawn up by George Green. He had about 60 share farmers working for him, and they all had about 10 men working for them. So a workforce on the farm of about 600 men, and then of course you've got women and children. That is the reason why the township of Greenthorpe was built, on private land. Green named after Green, of course, and Thorpe meaning village, to house the workers associated with the share farming going on the land. When the second stage of this building started in 1908, there was 450 men employed in the building of the second stage. So had an enormous community, of course, had its own school and everything that was required, supplies, general store, of course, and everything that was required to run such a large enterprise at the time. Now, in early 1900, Iandra became the hub of the wheat growing industry in Australia. They produced over 100,000 bags of wheat here at any one time, which was enormous bags of wheat. But of course they had a problem with getting rid of that produce, because the nearest railhead was Harden, of course. And so George Green was instrumental in bringing the light rail through from Purawasa to Greenthorpe, which opened this country up enormously. And to get rid of this wheat, of course, and return it back to land and goods, etc. So George Green had 2 sons and 3 daughters. One son died very young, and came past the church, didn't he? Up here on the top of the hill. Church has just had its roof restored after a massive windstorm 2 years ago. Back in action, we now be opening the doors up for wedding ceremonies, etc.
And they could go out and do a bit of painting and a little bit of something. Oh, well,
Orange and the daffodils. It's just